the backbone of America.
Welcome to the Backbone of America podcast. Today we have here with us Chef Danny Davies. Danny is a private estate chef, also spends a lot of his time on super yachts, a very enviable career. So we're going to be discussing a little bit about that today. Danny, thanks for being here today. We appreciate you coming down here from, what is it?
I actually flew in from Martinique like 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very nice. What were you on there?
I was on a 160 meter. I was on there for 10 days. We had a boss trip. So we had the owner of the boat and his two sons and another guest as well. Had them for around 5 days. We cruised around the Pitons in St. Lucia before dropping them off and then heading over to Martinique. So in Martinique, what we were doing is getting the boat ready to then ship over to Italy. So the boat's going to travel over the Atlantic on another boat so it doesn't get any kind of wear and tear. The engineers are going to go with it so they can kind of fix up the boat and do any problems that need to get fixed. They'll then go into Italy, where I'll be in the shipyard for around 6 weeks. They'll clean the hull. They'll replace any of the stuff they need to replace. And then the boss flies out and joins them in Italy.
Incredible. Let me ask you, for individuals that want to get into this business, I mean, we discussed it over lunch, that being a private chef, private estate chef, is probably at the highest that you could be on as a chef, you know? So for individuals that are working right now at a restaurant or some other type of work like that, what would they have to do to get somewhere where you're at today?
Well, to work on super yachts, you need to have the certificates. So you need to have your SCTW, which I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's basically allows you to be a sailor and be employed on the water. Then you need a medical, which is your ENG1, which allows you to, again, be a sailor and work on the ocean. For private estates, it's a little bit different. It's about knowledge and mastery of the culinary arts and understanding what you can do. So you need a few years in the restaurants, kind of learning those skills, or culinary college. And then you need to find a client that's going to be willing to pay you and let you come into their home and cook for them. There's no real kind of defined route. To be a yacht chef, I think there is, by getting your SCTW and your medical and then applying for yacht chef jobs. But for a private chef, it's about being in the right place at the right time and cooking for the right people.
Understood. Yeah, I wasn't aware there was so much licensing. I figured it was more about reputation. Maybe you get your hand in with an individual that maybe took a chance on you and said, sure, come on board. And then they start referring themselves out. As you know, it's a small community, you know, for these mega yacht owners. So a good referral or recommendation is sought out after, you know?
Oh, it is, yeah. And a lot of the chefs that do it, you have to have this paperwork. It's like part of the safety part of the being employed at sea. But a lot of chefs that do it will have already had a Michelin star background or, you know, a high end kind of fine dining experience background before they get into yachting. But once you're in and once you've got the certificates and you're working on the boats, it generally is down to who you know, who you can impress and who you've cooked for.
Yeah,
definitely. The captain will write you a reference letter, and these are like worth gold in our industry. If you get a good reference letter, that will get you the next job, and hopefully on a bigger boat, working for more money with higher end clients.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned you spent 10 years for the British Armed Forces. You ended up working for Prince Harry and William. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, how did you end there, and did that help you in any way to where you are now?
Yeah, I think definitely did. So 10 years in the British Army, I started cooking when I was very young, but always kind of wanted to be, you know, a soldier, like a man, a real man. And when I got to 18, I took my chance and joined the British Army. Traveled quite extensively. I lived out in Germany for 3 years. Went to Kosovo, Macedonia, Iraq a few times, Afghanistan. Also worked with the UN in Cyprus, and had a really kind of long career doing a lot of things. I volunteered for a lot of stuff. I did urban survival. I did a combat chef course. I did a sniper's course. I did jumped out of planes, learned to scuba dive, did a bunch of stuff. And that ultimately landed me with the Household Cavalry Regiment, which is one of the most prestigious regiments to work with in the UK. It's the ones that look after the main castles. They look after the Queen and King. And I got posted to Windsor Barracks, where I was the chef for, like I said, the Household Cavalry Regiment. During that time, the Prince Harry and Prince William came of age, and they joined the Household Cavalry. I was moved into the officers' mess and kind of brought the level up there to an acceptable level for royalty. and became their chef. And because I was very highly skilled with a weapon and with a car, survival and stuff, I became part of their extraction team. So I kind of traveled where the boys went, made sure that they're well fed, and if anything went down, I was able to kind of get them out.
Danny, the individuals that request your services, I mean, I know you do a lot of cooking shows, but I imagine you also network a lot, because the individuals that call you are going to be either the yacht owners, they're going to be agents in the business, charter management companies. Tell me a little bit about how you get your business.
So one of the things I have is a website, and that allows me to kind of showcase my skills, but also give details about my career path and what I've done already and what I've achieved. I get hired by that usually for kind of like a dinner. So someone will give me a call and say, hey, I've got a dinner night. If you guests would like you to cook. But every time I've done that, that ends up in being usually an estate job, and I'll stay with that family or that individual and cook for them for a while. When it comes to captains, my website isn't so kind of prominent. It's about networking, like you said, and working with different agents. So I'm on the books of maybe 4 or 5 different agents that will work with yacht brokers and charter brokers and captains to find the best chefs. And that's where I kind of come in and show my skills and have my CV. I also have a portfolio of work that I've done and achievements that I have. I've won a few competitions and things. So I let the clients know this is what I've done and what I've achieved. And then that's how I get hired. And my hiring process is usually a phone call from a captain that tells me about the boat and where it is. And that's usually pretty quick. Within maybe 4 or 5 days of that phone call, I'll be on a flight and flying out to the Caribbean to join that boat.
Understood. Yeah, the website's not for high traffic, right? You're just a select group of people that you want to see that as a business card. Tell me about the last, you mentioned you spent 3 years working for a very influential man that and you were his private chef, among other things. How was that experience compared to what you're doing now, which is you're on call, and you spend maybe 10, 13 days on a yacht? Did you enjoy working more full-time for somebody, or do you like the freelance?
Well, I like the hustle. I like the kind of the journey of getting a boat, getting a job, and going out there, completing it, having a fantastic time, and flying back in. I like that. But the guy that I worked for was a very wealthy finance guy. He had a large estate up in New York and a couple of properties down here in South Florida. And what I would do for him is I'd cook for his family. I'd look after all of his kind of catering needs, so any parties that he had. But I also look after all of the properties in terms of any food that was needed at those houses. To give you an example of that, we would be in South Florida and maybe flying up for the week for the school holidays for spring break. So we would fly up to New York. I would open up the properties that were there, made sure they were fully stocked with all of the drinks and food and snacks for his guests to come in. When they moved in, they'd move into the property. I would then go and check that they had stuff for breakfast. Fruit and veg was available for them, fruit in their fruit bowls, things like that. And then I would arrange all of their lunches, dinners and breakfasts, usually at the main house, but also would go to their houses and maybe have one of the things we did was a couple were renewing their vows. So I gave them a date night. I went up to their property and cooked at their property on that estate, and then came back to the main house and cooked. And we flew back from New York and Florida quite regularly. So I organized food for the plane and also organizing food to be at the house for when we got there. So we didn't have to order in. It was all seamlessly taken care of. He was like you say, he was a big finance guy, very into his triathlons. So I worked with his nutritionist and a personal trainer. And we'd meet every 2 weeks. We'd meet on a Zoom call, discuss his menus, discuss his blood works and what races that he had coming up, so that we could adjust his menu, kind of give him all the macronutrients and protein levels and things like that, were all kind of adjusted to give him the best before his competitions.
Wow, yeah, he seems ambitious. And now, where do you source the food that you get? I mean, are you shopping at the local supermarket, or is this like specific areas for?
Well, it all depends who you're cooking for. This guy that I was telling you about, we used to import fish from Hawaii, so it would be caught the day before, chilled, sent on a plane overnight, and I would have it the next day to be able to give him the best quality and the highest standard possible. But for instance, the boat that I was just working on in St. Lucia and St. Martin, I actually, when I landed, I was picked up in a big black Sprinter van and taken to the supermarkets to buy as much food as I could there, to go back to the boat and then have that to cook with. So it's a very two extremes. One day I can be buying $1,000 worth of caviar. The other day I can be in a supermarket and trying to get food that isn't moldy that I can then prepare and cook for the guests. The Caribbean is probably one of the hardest places to get fresh fruit and vegetables from. And so it all becomes part of the job.
Yeah, it's an island, so it's going to be tough. Yeah, it reminds me, over lunch, I was telling you about the documentary, Jiro Dreams of Sushi, and it was talking about how these restaurants, which are Michelin star restaurants, they basically go to these markets that were for the fish that were caught the night before, and they handpick the tunas that they want. You know, they have no, I don't want this tuna, I want this one for maybe because of what they see. I don't know, maybe they have an eye for quality, you know. They don't want them to be bruising.
Those guys are masters, aren't they?
Yeah. So it's very unique. Who do you look up to in the chef business?
Lots of people, really. Initially, when I was younger, it would be kind of the Gordon Ramsays of the world and people like that. But now I find it's people with authenticity. I think you can find some fantastic chefs out there that are not on such a higher platform, but have got such an energy and passion for what they do that you can really appreciate it. Recently, I was in Monaco, and we went over to Italy to a Michelin star place. I can't remember the name of it now, but I met the chef and his team. Very small team, only 8 people, which is kind of crazy for a Michelin star. There's usually 20 chefs behind their main chef. But his kind of story was that it was an old house that his grandparents used to live in. That when he got to the level that he could afford to, he bought that house and made it into the restaurant it is. So you go in and it's like going into someone's house, you know, and you're kind of welcomed in, and such an amazing food. And it's those people that really inspire me because there's so much passion in what they do. They're not just pumping out food to appease the masses, you know. It's about that individuality. Yeah,
and they're not in it for the profit. They kind of have a story, you know, or they just enjoy what they do. Anything that's not commercialized, that's where the money is at. So if you want to have like a niche product, you're going to have to do something small. Danny, have you had any strange requests from any of these individuals? You deal with the 1% of the 1% of the world. Tell me a little bit about these individuals. What is it they like? Are they very laid back? Or have you had some strange requests?
So, yeah, the 1%. I think someone said to me, a very wealthy guy said to me once, there's so many things that you want when you're achieving money, when you're trying to get that status and get that money. And maybe it's a certain type of car. For him, it was a car. And he always wanted to have this race car because it was iconic as he was growing up. And when he actually got it, where his office was, there was a big, and so he had to go really slowly over this speed bump because it was a nice Porsche, you know, low to the ground. And all the guys in the office realized this. So then they would stand in the window and mock him as he came into work while he had to slowly go over the speed bump. And he started to realize that he didn't want the car. He wanted to get another car, and he went and he did that. And he said it wasn't until a year or two later that he sat back and actually went, I never needed that car. I just wanted the idea. I liked the idea of that car. And that car became a joke that everyone teased me about. And I think that's very true when it comes to chefs and cooking for these really wealthy people. A lot of them don't really know what they want, and they need a chef to kind of guide them in what's good for them and what will be beneficial to everybody in the group. Yeah, there's some really strange requests, and people with a lot of money, and who have had money for a long time, are usually very chilled and relaxed and laid back. And you'll find they'll have maybe 1 or 2 expensive things like a nice watch. Generally, their clothes are not the highest brand or the Gucci and everything like that. And people that are just coming into money will have an expensive watch, expensive shoes, and all the bling and want all the good stuff. And they're 2 kind of archetypes of people that will charter boats and employ me as private chef. For strange requests, yes. So we had a family on a boat that really liked, I can't remember the name of the crab company that's based here, Willie's Stone Crab or something.
Joe's Stone Crab.
Joe's Stone Crab. So Joe's Stone Crab comes from a place in the Bahamas. We were close to that place in the Bahamas. So I called Joe's restaurant, spoke to the head chef, said, hey, the client would like to get a couple of pounds worth of claws shipped over to the Bahamas. Can you do that for me? He said, yeah, I can do that for you, but my supplier is really close to where you are. Let me give you his number and you can just buy it directly off him. There's no point of sending it to the restaurant and then shipping it back. So I presented this option to the captain. He presented it to the client, and the client refused, saying he wanted
Joe's.
he wanted not just Joe's, but he wanted the sauce, he wanted the packaging. And so that's what we did. We chartered a plane, we put some Joe's crab claws on it, and we flew it from Miami.
Yeah. And that example of the individual that wanted the car, I assume of course they don't want the car. They want what the car used to make them feel when they were younger, the experience of, wow, that's when you have this car, you're extremely successful, but as time goes on, obviously that car gets outdated, but yeah, what I've noticed for individuals that have a lot of money is that they want what nobody can have. So it's no longer just wanting what everyone else wants. They want to have the things that are very unique, or they're in low supply. So a collectible car, they only made 5 of them, or the food, things that are only prepared by certain, chefs, or maybe, something that's in season. I think that's what people like about Joe's Stone Crabs, that it's not open, I don't think, year round, at least the certain claws that they serve. And so they use it as a scenario of thinking, okay, well, this is the only time in the year I'll be able to get it. We have to go, and maybe he has a story that he likes Joe for a certain reason,
Yeah, I guess so, right?
I've never been there, but I've heard a whole lot. It's an iconic restaurant down here in South Florida, and everybody seems to know, who it is. I don't know how, but I'm sure they've been here over 50 years probably. What's the difference of it being, employed full-time by somebody rather than being, self-employed? I know you mentioned it's more exciting, because obviously you're getting different opportunities handed to you, So one day you might be in the Caribbean, the next day maybe in the Mediterranean. But, is there a lot of stress in not knowing, when the next job is coming or how you're going to make ends meet? For you, maybe you have a lot of clientele, but let's assume somebody just getting into the business.
There's definitely a lot of stress. I would say 70% of my kind of day, my grind is finding that next job. As I was telling you before, I'm booked up now. I have one job ready to go. I'll fly out on the 14th. Also, I have a commitment on the 1st of April to I'm going to be a co-host at the Monaco Yacht Show competition, Yacht Chef competition. So these 2 dates now have meant that I have to fit in the other jobs around those dates. And as my year kind of schedule pans out, it's a real kind of job to get those gigs and slot them into the calendar to make sure that I make enough money, to pay for all the bills and things like that. To get a full-time job is nice, but then you're 100% committed to that owner and that crew. So that means I can't really do any of the side kind of hustles that I do and other ways that I make money. So for me at the moment, it's nice to have the freedom. It allows me to do things like the food and wine pairing thing that I'm doing tomorrow, and obviously going out for the competition and things like that. I run a podcast under a YouTube channel for yacht chefs, like building the community of yacht chefs. And if I went full time on a boat, my priorities of doing that would become less because my priorities then be to that owner and to
become mundane probably. What about high season? Is there such a thing as high season in this level?
Definitely. So from Thanksgiving is kind of our yacht chef high season, and that runs through to Christmas. St. Bart's at New Year's is like the place to be for a yacht chef. Most of the billionaires in the world have their boats moored or anchored out in St. Bart's. And that kind of, the whole week before and the week after are when a lot of people want to go and see that area around the US Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. So yeah, high season is now. It's actually kind of coming to an end now as we go into March and April, where boats will be shipped. So like the boat I was just telling you in Martinique, that will be shipped over to the Med. Like I said, I'm flying out in April to the Monaco show. And that kind of starts the Monaco Mediterranean season out there in April. And so that becomes then the high season for the Mediterranean from kind of May, June, July, August. And then as you get through to September, most of the boats will go into the yard, so into the shipyards where they'll have work done on them, have the bottoms cleaned, the hulls cleaned, and get shipped or cross over to the Mediterranean, over to the Caribbean for the Caribbean season. And that's generally how the cycle goes. In the Caribbean and the Bahamas, you can have enough work here as a freelance chef to kind of go through the whole season. But as the hurricanes come, as we know here in South Florida, it all kind of closes down quite a bit.
So on low season, you mentioned you just start doing local things?
I'll either do local things or I'll go out to the Mediterranean and work out in the Mediterranean.
And what's so special about St. Bart's? I hear it all the time. Everyone's
know.
out there. I mean, there's got to be something, right? I figured, and it's not just for millionaires. It's more like a billionaire hangout, where that's where all the very ultra wealthy people go. But I can't seem to find the reason why they chose that particular place.
I think it's the uniqueness, as you said before. The actual port is very small, and there's a waiting list to get in. So you can't book a spot there. And when the weather gets too rough, they kick everybody out. You have to leave. So having your boat tied up on the dock in St. Bart's is a very exclusive thing. It only happens for a few boats. The billionaires tend to have these very big boats that don't fit in the port. So again, I think it's just that uniqueness of that spot.
So what do they do? The billionaires that have their boats outside of the yards, they take a little ferry inside and just
take a small tender.
Oh, I got it.
And ride in
and walk, and then at night spend the nights in their yachts.
Usually, yeah.
So you can catch them walking around.
You can. Yeah, it's there's only probably 4 or 5 main streets in St. Bart's with all the big shops and stuff on. It's a very unique little island. There's not much like it.
Tell me about your 2 books, Vegan Plus and Vegan Plus 2.0.
So they kind of came about while I was working for this finance guy in New York and Florida. Like I said, he had a nutritionist and a personal trainer. He also was kind of vegan when I met him. He would have a little bit of fish. And his personal trainer and his nutritionist was like, he needs to up his protein. And he needed lots of other kind of macros to kind of stop inflammation so that he could train harder and for longer. And the books came about because his wife wanted me to make beautiful food. And it's kind of what I'm known for, is making very pretty food, very visually stunning food with lots of colors. So I would take vegetables and do work magic with them and try and paint them into a beautiful plate of food. And they were like, you should take pictures. You should write a book. And so I started. My concept was a little bit off point. My branding wasn't very good, but the idea is that you take plant-based food and you add a luxury ingredient to it. So maybe some salmon that's flown in from Hawaii, or some lobsters, or some Wagyu, just a little bit of very high-end protein that's hard to source, that's very nutrient dense, that's going to give the client I was working for, all the energy and all the nutrients that he needs, but also look fantastic as well. And that was the theory behind the books. I've got 2 of them out. They're available on Amazon. Check them out. Vegan Plus and Vegan Plus 2.0. And they're plant-based food with unique ingredients such as caviar and Wagyu, but add the protein to what would be a vegan dish.
And it's very high-end food, or it's just normal day-to-day food?
No, very high-end, luxury, kind of unique food.
I got it. So not really for the masses, more for like the very unique niche.
Yeah, for those yacht chefs out there that want to up their game and take it to the next level.
Tell me a little bit about why the flags are so important. When I first got into the business, they mentioned to me that the banks only like financing certain flags. It was the U.S. flag, the British Virgin Islands, also known as the BVI. You have the Marshall Islands. And then another one that's there is the Jamaican flag, which doesn't, ring a rhyme with the other 3, because the other 3 are very wealthy places, or at least the U.S. and Europe. Why is Jamaica among these 4?
Well, I think Jamaica is because historically it was a pirate town that kind of, when the British took it over, it became a very vibrant port. And the reason that you would flag your boat or register your boat to a certain flag is the tax breaks that country brings to you. So like the Cayman Islands and Marshall Islands are very, very favorable tax laws to run your yacht business from. And I'm sure Jamaica must have fantastic laws there. One of the guys I've just worked for, we were reflagging the boat to a Jamaican flag. So they must have some very good tax breaks.
Was he Jamaican?
No, he's from Chicago.
And he didn't tell you about why he did the Jamaican flag?
No, he didn't know, but I'm sure it is to do with the tax and the breaks that they give you for that. You can register your boat in any country. All you need is a business set up in that country.
Now you mentioned you had a story about a Jamaican guy, or Did I get that wrong?
Oh yeah. So one of the boats that I worked on, probably the best boat that I worked on, was a 420 foot, 115 meter mega yacht called Apu, motor yacht Apu. So I worked for the owner, Mr. Probably shouldn't say his name. Mr. Chi Lee Chin. Yeah, I can say Mr. Lee Chin. I cooked for him in the BVIs. I actually went out to St. Bart's with him. I cooked for him and his family for a week. And every day, while his daughters and wife were getting ready for dinner, he liked to sit with the chef and talk about the menu and kind of watch the chef prepare the last bits of food. So I'd do that up on the sun deck. We had a tapanaki bar. So I would be up there with him, just kind of, shooting the verbial, right? And we chatted a lot. And he became quite impressed with my story and what I'd done in my career cooking for the printers and things like that, and offered me a head chef job when his boat was ready, which I thought was, just a bit of a promise, and never really gave it any much thought. 4 years later, I got a phone call from his PA to fly out to Germany, where I joined Apu in the final stages of it being launched. I flew out to West Germany to a place called Brennen, where they have the Lürsen shipyard. So this is a big Lürsen yacht. Yeah. We had 37 crew, but we ran with 37 crew, but there was 54 crew on site. Wow. A lot of the crew have rotation, only on the boat for a time, and they kind of job shared out with another crew member. So we had all 54 on site. I cooked for them. I trained the chefs, and we launched the boat in Germany. It then went over to the UK and then traveled all the way down to Jamaica. The boat was for his grandma. I think she was 97. That was her 97th birthday. And we were able to get the yacht there perfectly for her birthday. It pulled into port in Jamaica, and they flew her out from helicopter, landed on the boat, and she had a birthday celebration there.
That's got to be probably the most expensive birthday gift anyone's ever got.
Yeah, right. A few billion spent on that.
Yeah, the Lürsen, that's a very high-end brand for mega yachts. It's not really well known. I had never heard of it until somebody mentioned to me the name. But that's because they just focus on very, very high-end mega yachts.
Yeah, they do, yeah. I think they were actually one of the first shipbuilders to make a luxury yacht and brand it as a luxury yacht.
How big are they running these days?
Well, 150 meters for like 400 plus foot is probably one of the biggest ones that was released that year, which is 2023. It was launched. There are some bigger ones, but that kind of 400 foot limit is like where the really big ones sit.
So you're cooking on a yacht every day or every other day when you're on a charter. I mean, tell me about some of the extreme conditions you've been under. I mean, have you ever been caught in like in a storm?
Yeah, I had some rough crossings. So I went from Fort Lauderdale. We traveled down to St. Martin. It should have taken us around 3 or 4 days. It took around 5 or 6 days. The Gulf Stream, kind of the current travels up through the Bahamas, up through past Miami and up through South Florida, kind of coming up the country. That's where the current goes. So if you're going down, you just hit all the wind and all the waves head on. So the boat was constantly kind of slapping on the water. Everyone was sick on the boat. It was so hard to cook. I literally just couldn't. We took about 2 days of this kind of beating on the ocean and pulled into the Bahamas and just had one night to sleep and kind of hit it again and went at it again. There's been some really kind of tough times in that trip because it was relentless. It just didn't stop. But apart from that, usually they move these big, expensive assets out of the way of many major storms. So it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's not fun to be on the boat.
No, it's terrifying to be out in the open ocean. It happened to me once on a cruise, and I still remember to this day. This was a cruise. You're thinking, I don't know how big this cruise was, but I felt huge, it. Right? Imagine something. This is probably 1/4 of the size. So it's terrifying. Well, Danny, how are you giving back to the community? I know you mentioned you did some things. You want to share something?
Yeah. So I love being a yacht chef. When I first got into the industry, it was very closed off. It was a very secretive thing. And I feel that I've been able to open that out now and kind of share my experiences. I do that on my Instagram, Future Chef Project, for people to see what I do. But I also run a YouTube channel called Behind the Line with Chef Danny Davies. And I'll go and interview other yacht chefs, find out their story, how they got into being a yacht chef and what they do and how their season's been. That's on YouTube. You can go and check that out, have a look at it. I just love the community, love being part of it. I host yacht chef competitions here in South Florida, and now in Monaco as well. I'm going out soon to go and co-host one of those, which will be fun. I think it's so important for anybody in any business to kind of network and to get to know the people that they're working with, or if it's against them or with them. If you're part of a community, you've just got more resources for everybody.
Agreed. And your books were, you mentioned give us the names and where they can find
them. They're Vegan Plus 2.0. They're available on Amazon.
Excellent. Danny, good to have you. Thank you so much for being on.
Made in America.